If you consider abusing terrain in World of Warships Legends to be shooting at innocent islands before a match, well, give me just 15 minutes and I'll show you a different way to use island cover as a technique to take your cruiser play to a whole new level. So let's start out by defining what we mean when we talk about abusing terrain in World of Warships. By definition, it's using island cover to get an asymmetrical advantage over enemy ships when your team is attacking or defending an objective or a key area of the map. It could be baiting a cap zone or drawing enemy ships into an area where you can put fire onto them effectively. It could be supporting a push of your own teammates into a cap. And it also could be defending your teammates while they retreat from a key zone of confrontation, again, like a key cap area or channel on the map. Abusing terrain is also a great tactic for light cruisers or gunboat destroyers specifically, ships with good high gun angles, with a high rate of fire and a good fire chance. Those things all come into play. And lastly, abusing terrain is a way a lower tier ship can exert map control over higher tier ships, sometimes multiple higher tier ships, with a high rate of success. Now that we've defined what abusing terrain is, let's talk about what makes it so effective. First and foremost, this tactic is a true form of psychological warfare that you unleash on enemy team players, subjecting any foe to a continuous barrage of shells and the fires that those shells can set from an invisible ship that they can't see behind terrain is unsettling and persuasive. Now, Frankenstein hated being chased by mobs with torches, and for the same reason you see Battleship players posting on Reddit and Discord every single day how unfair it is to face HE spamming cruisers that are entrenched behind an island. Now you know that you're getting into their heads and you're pushing them to be both uncomfortable and make bad decisions when you use this tactic. From a physical perspective, abusing terrain allows a player to inflict an incredible amount of asymmetrical damage. Now, in open water, a little ship like an Atlanta facing a big ship like an Iowa would have literally zero chance to live for very long. But when concealed behind an island, that Atlanta can melt down a ship over twice its hit point value through the alpha strike of its HE shells, its ability to set accumulated damage from fires, and even potential torpedo strikes, so that one small ship can hold off or even melt down and destroy that much larger ship, or sometimes even multiple larger ships. So when it comes to abusing terrain, cruisers and gunboat destroyers are the best fit ships. You can find these ships in almost every tech tree and premium ship choices from a bunch of different nations. You don't have to stick with only the US line, which is well noted for its high arcing guns. There are also other choices like the Mogami, the Kutuzov, the Belfast, and the Akazuki, a great example of a gunboat DD that can also abuse terrain very effectively. So what qualities do we desire in these ships? A high shell arc is really nice to have. It helps you fire over the edges, or in some cases even over the tall parts of islands when you talk about a ship like Helena or Atlanta. It can be a heavy cruiser or a light cruiser, but generally rate of fire matters. There's more psychological impact with a high rate of fire. There's also more shells landing, giving a bigger, more consistent main battery output, which has the chance of lighting more fires as well. An average or better fire chance is a desired quality. Bonus points. There are additional things that can help when you're abusing terrain and using islands to your advantage. Torpedoes help you to ambush any ships that get ambitious and come around the edge of an island at you, like a battleship. You can use your torpedoes on the Atlanta, on a Japanese cruiser, Kutuzov, Akazuki, for instance. Belfast, Helena, they're going to have to sit that out in this particular example. But just helps give you protection from being rushed. Bonus points also come down to self-spotting consumables. Having a spotter or fighter plane, in my mind, is better than having radar, though they are both useful. The fact of the matter is that spotter and fighter planes will last a lot longer than a radar consumable, which generally only lasts 30 to 45 seconds. And lastly, having a smoke consumable is a benefit. Ships like Flint, Belfast, Kutuzov have that smoke, so when you do get spotted because a ship comes around the edge of your island position and detects you, you can get that momentary protection, maybe for a minute to 2 minutes, and use it to reposition or maybe finish off an enemy ship that's threatening you. So we've talked about what abusing terrain is, what impact it can have on your enemies, and what ships allow you to pull this technique off successfully. Now let's talk about why thoughtful positioning is key to making abusing terrain work. Here's a map example of estuary, and in domination mode, the A and D caps are surrounded by a bunch of small islands, which are perfect spots to pull off terrain abuse. Even without those caps in defend the base mode, ships are going to have to travel down those main thoroughfares, and again, island cover is going to work really well to help defend those traverse zones or help to basically amplify your team's ability to create pushes by supporting your main pushing ships like your battleships and your destroyers from an island covered position. So on estuary specifically, what would we think about? In this case, let's talk about an example of the D cap, and we're going to be using Atlanta in the background footage in a recent match that I had. First, we want to secure an island position near a cap or a key flank, as we talked about. That's designated here by the red arrow that you see on the south side of D, where we take up position in our Atlanta. Secondly, we want to choose an island that allows us to measure our main battery field of fire. So we want to be on an island that's close enough that we can cover a good portion of the cap or the main approach thoroughfare that the enemy ships are going to be traveling through. And in a perfect world, they'll be getting closer to our covered position the more they try to seek their objective. Thirdly, we want to, again, predict that enemy team travel path. So as I said, if they're coming towards your position, it's advantageous because you're going to be able to fire at them for a longer period of time. If you start firing on a battleship, for instance, from your covered position and they just turn away and get out of main battery range, they know you're there, your surprise has been spoiled, and the value of taking that position has been diminished. So we want a path that the enemy will have to continue to get closer to your position over time. And then lastly, you want to pick a spot that your team or terrain can help protect you from obvious detection angles from enemy ships and aircraft. Now, aircraft are harder to defend against because they're above the island, they can detect you over the island, and see you behind it. But where you actually position your ship can make a big difference from whether enemy ships can basically see you from the sides of your position. That's basically designated here by the two light colored triangles. If our team is staying around the cap at sea and keeping enemies from infiltrating the middle area of the map, and we're effectively scaring ships off from traveling down the 10 line, in this case, the far right line of the map, there's little chance that enemy ships will spot us too quickly, and we'll be able to get a lot of fire on D before any potential spotting happens. So the Atlanta example on estuary that we just reviewed was actually a case where we were able to deter multiple ships from pushing a cap in one small Atlanta with the help of, I think, one allied ship. So what other ingredients for success come into play in making that a successful scenario? Well, first of all, before the battle, there's a few things that we can focus on as players. And first of all is practicing our gunnery skills. So especially in ships like the high gun arcs of the American light cruiser line, an AI mode battle or 2 or 3 or 4, including multiple battles in standard mode, can really help you learn how to land shells on target, even with guns that don't have the most forgiving and easy to aim gun arcs. We'll also want to practice a technique of blind firing, which is basically shooting over an island at an icon and estimating where the ship is and where it's traveling to. When we can't actually see the ship itself, we can only see the player icon. That gives you an idea of where the enemy ship is, but doesn't tell you the whole story. Secondly, before the battle, we want to equip ship modules and commander skills that will positively impact our ability to abuse the terrain. So on the ship module side, the acceleration and deceleration module can be super helpful. That allows you to push away out the edge of the island and back quickly and easy. And also from a commander skill perspective, we would like to choose things that help increase our rate of fire and also improve our fire chance if at all possible. Before the battle, we can also research map locations. So Estuary is a great example where all the key thoroughfares are connected together by a chain of islands that we can use for island cover. But almost every map has some kind of combination of island terrain that you can basically cozy up to a key zone of confrontation or a cap point and get fire on that key area while you are concealed. Now, during the battle, some other key considerations. We want to assess our spotting and support at the start of the game. So we want to look at our team roster, see what type of ships we have on our team, see what type of ships are on the enemy team. And we want to read immediately where our team is deploying. If we're in a lemming train situation, we probably don't want to go to a cap alone and try to do terrain abuse if we don't have a spotter plane, because we're not going to have a ship to spot for us when we're parked behind the island. We'll also potentially want to request support. So again, maybe we can break up that lemming train from happening by pinging a few key ships that could support us, like a destroyer for spotting or a battleship for heavy-duty gun support from behind our position. Also, we want to minimize detection using the midpoint spotting rule, which is essentially the knowledge that the way we get spotted in a ship is at the highest point at the middle of the ship. So as long as we don't stick out more than halfway from an island, even if we're firing from one of our turrets that's out beyond the edge of that island, we won't get spotted. So you can push out a little bit, no more than halfway, get off some rounds, duck back into cover. It can be a very effective way to get fire on the enemy when you can actually visualize them, but they cannot see you at all. We want to use a light touch on the throttle while we're minimizing our detection using this ship midpoint kind of spotting game. I don't go more than typically a quarter of a throttle mark forward, because if you do go too quickly forward, you won't be able to decelerate and get back into cover quick enough before you expose the midpoint of your ship and wind up taking significant damage or even getting deleted. One bad mistake in this case can be deadly if you have enemy battleships close by. And lastly, plan an escape route in a fallback position. Things may not go well. Your support ships may leave you alone and naked in that position, and you won't be able to stop a push of 2 or 3 ships on your own. Hopefully you do have torpedoes in that case when you do get ambushed, but if you see your teammates dying around you or falling back, find a route that you can retreat on if possible, and that will allow you to live longer into the match and have a more lasting impact. So now that we've covered the key things to think about with regard to abusing terrain as a tactic in World of Warships Legends, let's push this a little further in summary, thinking about some key player considerations and again the overall impact of this skill on the game. So from a skill floor perspective, sorry to say for brand new players, but this is not the easiest technique to pull off. I'd say a medium skill level is the minimum that's required. So a brand new player is not going to necessarily have the ships unlocked, the gunnery skills required, the situational awareness, ability to read their team composition and their team deployment. So it's just going to take probably 500 to 1,000 games before you feel comfortable enough to try this out and do it effectively. Doesn't mean you can't give it a shot, but it's going to be difficult for you to pull off until you have your feet pretty well wet in this game. The good news is, once you do have the basics in place from an equipment and skill perspective, the skill ceiling for abusing terrain is really high. You can keep refining your technique here with regard to researching map locations, again, reading team deployments, minimizing your detection, really using a light touch on the throttle to maneuver your ship very precisely to keep firing but remain undetected. And to think of the next level things like, what is my fallback plan? How do I simultaneously assess when to fall back and where to move back to if my position falls? So again, not for the newest players, but once you have some basic skills in place in the game and some basic equipment, you can start practicing this and practice it for a long time to get really good at it. From a risk-reward perspective, it's high risk, but it's incredibly high reward. We talked about a big potential impact here, especially on Battleship players. And there's, again, a reason that Battleship players continually whine about HE spam. And it is the natural offset to Battleships that cruisers bring to the game. But again, that little ship parked behind an island, remaining undetected, raining fire on a much bigger and more quote-unquote powerful ship has a huge psychological impact and can have a very big damage impact as well, and lead your team to success in many instances. So it is a high risk but high reward ratio. From a must-learn perspective, cruiser mains that want to be cruiser players that are well-rounded will want to pursue learning terrain abuse or island cover use, especially the USN lines or US Navy lines, because of the high firing gun angles of the US Navy cruisers, which really allow to make this technique sing. Atlanta is my most played ship. I've played all the way to the top of the line in both Baltimore and in the heavy cruiser line, and to Cleveland in the light cruiser line. The vast majority of the US cruisers are well suited for this type of play. And again, it's really rewarding when you master it, because you know you're having a big impact on the game. You know you're having a much bigger impact than the size of your small cruiser. And again, frustrating the enemy team to no end, which is satisfying, right? That's what we want to do. I want to thank you for watching this first episode of World of Warships Legends Shots, where today we've talked about the concept of abusing terrain and how to become a cruiser or gunboat destroyer player that Battleship players really, really hate. I appreciate your time and watching this content that I've put together. My goal is to help you become a more confident player in World of Warships, so you really enjoy this game as much as I do, and you can have the full impact on it that you want to have as an awesome player. You can follow me on Twitch under VannKraken. If you like and subscribe to my content on YouTube, I really appreciate it, and it helps our channel grow. Thank you so much again for joining us today. I am VannKraken, and I am out.